On the second part, let me jump in on the second part there.
Please do.
So I don't really pay too much attention to that. I think it's interesting that you're pulling up the stats, and I think everybody knows that they've heard of this, they've seen it, whether they're familiar with it or not. I don't know. I'm just looking at it from this lens. It went to 1,000. And it created some hoopla on CNBC, and everyone's like, "Oh, this is interesting." People were using magic internet money, and they think it's real, right? And then it crashed, and they're all like, "What a bunch of idiots," right? That was kind of the narrative. Then it surged up to 20,000, and people were like, "What in the world is this? How?" It's a double pump on tulips. Yeah. Sorry,
yeah,
it's the double pump on tulips. And then it crashed, right? And then they got their second chest beat of what a bunch of idiots.
Yeah.
Right? These people are so dumb. It lost 80% of its value. What are they thinking, right? Now
we're thinking bye.
Now it's the third time's the charm, right? The third time after a decade of tulips. And now it's at 20,000. And like just this past week, the headline on CNBC is the dollar being dethroned with a picture of a Bitcoin with a crown on it. Okay. Yeah. On prime time CNBC, that's the headline. And that's what they were discussing. And not only were they discussing that, the guy who was on talking about it was a fixed income guy saying people were pulling money out of the negative yielding fixed income market to the tune of 16 or 18 trillion dollars, right?
I love it when Preston does that.
$1 trillion, 16 to 18, whatever it is now. You can't even keep track of it, right? It's total monopoly made up money anymore. That's where some of the flows are coming from. Okay. Yeah. So what happens when this goes to 50 or it goes to 100 or it goes higher than that? What in the world do we think the headlines are going to sound like?
Yeah.
I mean, and this isn't, it's not like it's happening for the first time or that it's 3 years old. We're in a totally different situation than we were historically. So we can pull up these charts with these numbers and everything, and I think that it's all great, and I think people are definitely hearing about it more, but nothing will capture somebody's attention more than, hey, there's some crazy people out there spending $100,000 on an imaginary coin, and it just keeps on happening. And it's not just random people, it's Larry Fink talking about it. Right. It's Stan Druckenmiller talking about it. Maybe Ray Dalio talking about it. Bill Miller talking about it. And the list just keeps going on and on and on. So that's what I'm looking at. And that's where when I'm looking at this, punching through 20 and continuing to go, the thing that I'm saying to myself, it's not just that the number is going up anymore. It's that the number is going up, and then behind that subject of the Bitcoin going up is a backdrop of sheer flipping chaos. Sheer chaos in the bond market. Central banks printing another $5 billion. I'm sorry, $5 trillion, right? The numbers are so big, they're like imaginary. We're just making them up, right? Because, we've got triple P loans we're going to hand out to everybody. And you know what? I want people, these businesses are hurting. They're hurting. They need cash flow. That cash flow is going to supply the liquidity into the new system. That's just how it's going to play out, right? These businesses need this or they're going to go bankrupt. Evidently, every hedge fund on Wall Street also needs it. Get that, huh? That was a fascinating one. All these guys out there doing interviews on podcasts about how brilliant they are as capital allocators, and they're all taking out triple P loans, right?
Yeah.
That's your backdrop.
Yeah.
Your backdrop is a dumpster fire, along with Bitcoin going to 100,000.
Like Buffett said, right, when the tide goes out, you see who's swimming naked, and they all got exposed as swimming naked. To add on to Preston's point, there was also a report I was looking at, and I forget it was Citi or JP that put out, but they showed, all the gold flows, all the gold funds, the ETFs selling off and going into Bitcoin as well. You can see that like through Grayscale. So you can look in like Fidelity and look at some of those. So we see not just maybe some of that negative yielding bonds, as Preston pointed out, which is obviously a good use case, but also gold. And it's been an ongoing trend, right? So the name of the game, we have the boomers, the largest segment of the population, and they all need yield, right? They need income. And they're all retiring right now, and they're all trying to get yield, and all the pension funds that are adding up, and Social Security, and they're all based off the 7% yield, and there's no yield, and everybody's just searching for yield. And at the same time, because of all the money printing, and they brought interest rates to zero or negative, and so if I'm a sovereign or a hedge fund, an institution, and I have hundreds of billions or whatever dollars, and I'm putting that into T-bills or bonds, and I'm earning zero, why would I be guaranteed to have no yield when I could just move it into gold? Or now, like I said, we're seeing gold funds move into Bitcoin, and so that's definitely accelerating it. And I think, obviously, COVID has accelerated all of this, accelerated almost every area of life, working from home, using Zoom, but even this trend as well. And it's almost like, the government, the Fed, whatever you want to call it, they really have no choice. People need liquidity, as Preston just pointed out. And so they have no choice. They have to print the money. But by doing this, they just continue to push the use case and kind of do the marketing for another alternative asset like Bitcoin. So they have no choice. They have to do it. But the more they do it, the more they make the case for it, and the more they're pushing people over into it. So it's all coming together perfectly.
I'm in the mood to rant, so I'm just going to rant.
Yeah, so, please, man. So let's do it.
I see the central bank digital currencies come up in the chat, right? So riddle me this. How in the world are we going to issue these central bank digital currencies that are completely centrally controlled by every government around the world, and they're not going to debase those? Do we really think they're going to create yet another type of digital money that has blockchain in the title of it, and all of a sudden all of our fiscal appropriators are going to become responsible just by the snap of a finger and some magic dust, and we're clapping and we can fly now, right? Like, it's insane. It's totally mind-numbing insane for people to think that fiscal policy is going to just magically become responsible.
Never.
Right? Never. So they have to keep greasing the skids. I don't care if they call it a central bank digital currency. They call it whatever they've been calling it. They call it something else. The most trusted token ever in existence, right? They're going to debase it. And they're going to debase it because they have to debase it. Because we're at a point, we're at an end game where they have printed so much money and they have created so much deflation, price deflation, that the only thing they can do at this point is keep printing, because everyone's levered up to their eyeballs, right? There's no free cash flows for all these zombie companies that they keep propping up. And as long as that's the case, they're going to have to keep on printing. And if they have to keep on printing, something that is completely decentralized will win, as long as it has a fixed baseline of units to it. That's Bitcoin. So there's your central bank digital currency, like, debacle. And you're going to hear all these fancy people who have these academic PhDs and all this crap talk about how they're going to do, all the governments are going to come together and they're going to have these central bank digital currencies, and it's going to rock Bitcoin's world. They are so talking out their behind that it's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a story throughout history, right? The government figures out a way, the Roman Empire figures out a way to clip their coins and create more currency, and they go until they blow. Eventually, nobody accepts it anymore. And we've seen that story play out over and over and over again. And so, exactly. They're not going to wake up tomorrow and decide to live on a budget. They can't. And why would they? Why would they give up that power to create more money and enrich themselves? And of course, human nature won't allow that, and the need won't allow that as well. So they have no choice. They're going to keep going until they blow. At some point, and we don't know if that's a year or 50 years, but at some point it all ends. It doesn't work anymore because it can't work. and they're going to have to figure something out, and then they'll start over again. They're going to try, but yeah, it's definitely Bitcoin that changes that cycle, and at least gives us that life raft where we can get off of that game that they're playing. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how hard they go.
Okay, so when I used to fly, this was called fire for effect. That means your rounds are hitting, and now it's time to really hit the target, right? So here's my final one, and this is for gold. How in the world do we think that we're going to step in and peg whatever made-up currency we want to make to gold, and that we're not going to debase it against that gold? Right? Name me a time in history when gold has actually supplied a peg that has lasted. Zero.
Yeah, not for very long.
That there's a reason we as the United States came off a gold standard in 1971. There's a reason why.
Yep.
But people, it's almost like gold bugs don't ever want to talk about that situation, that we actually came off of a gold. Why did we come off a gold standard? Because we had to debase the currency and push it into circulation against the number of ounces we had in storage. If you think that that human in the loop is going to magically be stern and not allow that debasement to occur all of a sudden, even though it has never happened even once in human history, you are kidding yourself, right? This is the first time in history of mankind that a technology has been able to supply something decentralized that will peg the number of units, and there's no human that can step in and debase it. So for everyone out there with their gold, hey, it might do well. It might go up a couple percent. It might go up 20% in the next 3 years. I don't know. But I'm looking at it and I'm just like, I just don't get it. I don't get it. I'm just, maybe I'm out to lunch.
Well, and to your point, the problem with gold is because of its size and weight, it requires centralization. And so I like to say that centralization always leads to manipulation. And so we have to take the thing out of the hands of the government, right? That's what Hayek said. And so this, not only is it something outside the system, but because it's decentralized, nobody controls it. And because nobody controls it, nobody is able to manipulate it, because as you made the point, and I agree, someone's always going to do it.
Yeah.
If there's a way to debase it, to make more money, create money out of air, alchemy, they've been trying to do it forever. If there's a way to do it, they're going to do it. And so the only option is to go to something that nobody can control. Nobody has the ability, because human nature is always going to try to do that. And that's why the decentralized nature of Bitcoin is so revolutionary. Well, one of the many reasons why it's so revolutionary.
And, you know, it's kind of amazing how long the U.S. stayed on the gold standard after Bretton Woods. And the reason they were able to do this is because the fiscal appropriators at that point in time were being way more responsible than they are today. You have a buying habit cognitively, collectively on a macro scale that you didn't even, I mean, not even remotely had back then, right? Now, if we went on a gold standard now, it would be 1971 all over again, but it'd be like 3 monst later, because they have to debase that fast. So
and even if they went to a gold standard, it would probably be debased right off the bat, right? It would probably be 20% or 40% gold backing. It wouldn't be 100%. They can't do it.
Our debasement just in the last 10 years alone is 15% annually, somewhere around in that number. You'd have to go back. If you're looking at the M2 growth rate and you do a CAGR on it over the last 10 years, you're at like 15% debasement annually, right? So that's what they're going to do if they go back and everyone sings Kumbaya, the G7 gets together and, you know, we do the SDR thing and we peg it to gold and we do all this stuff that all these neat writers are writing about. They're going to debase against that gold to the tune of at least 15% annually, probably higher than that at this point because of this depression that we're in. So you're 20% or more, right?
Way more. And we know that because they're telling us how much they're going to spend, right? So we have the Green New Deal, which is now whatever the Biden New Deal, and they're estimated to spend between 30 to 100 trillion.
Yeah. It's just getting warmed up. Yeah.
They're gonna print between 30 to 100 trillion. What? So I mean, that's way more debasement than we've ever seen before. So they're already forecasting what that's going to be, and that's only the United States. What about the rest of the world that they're going to try to do this through? So we're going to see debasement at a level that we can't even probably comprehend at this point.
So when you
but it's
hear
it's
somebody
okay
say
because
that,
we don't have inflation. As long as we don't have inflation, guys.
we
so
don't
it's
have quote unquote inflation according to the basket that they tell you to look into, right? So
yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's why whenever I hear these arguments, oh, we're going to go back on a gold standard, it is the biggest eye roll for me. And usually I just be quiet. I kind of sit back. I listen to it. I'm just getting so tired of hearing that argument because it's such a BS argument.
It's
so at some
really.
so at some point though, I mean, so at some point, they're going to try to go to some SDR, which doesn't make a difference because they're going to debase it anyway, right? So it doesn't make it sound money again. So it's the US dollar just bigger, whatever. And they're going to print their $30 to $100 trillion, and they're going to blow up the currencies. And at some point,
they're going to try.
Well, they're going to try. I mean, they're going to print hundreds of trillions of dollars, and at some point, it's going to be like in Venezuela. There's paper currency everywhere, and nobody even picks it up because it's worthless. Exactly. So at some point, they've lost the trust, and I believe we're already losing massive trust. We can see that in the dollar right now. But at some point, people lose trust, and at some point, if they want to try to keep the game in check a little bit, they're going to have to do something to bring some trust back. And what do you think that would be? Or do you think it's game over? They don't get a second chance.
And this is what I was saying with Dan Tapiero on Twitter the other night. I said, hey man, it comes down to trust. So like, I can't tell you when trust becomes completely eroded and the global population flips the switch and says, all right, clearly this is something that I have to own some percentage of. Does that happen at 100,000? Does it happen at 150,000 a coin? I don't know. But there's going to come a point when people are saying, hey, I'm sitting on all these bonds that literally yield nothing, -%. Maybe I should take 5% of that. Maybe I should take 10% of it. Holy crap. Now the price is at 200,000. Maybe I need to take 20% and put it into this because I just might think that this currency thing, this fiat currency is failing. And that's the trust that Mark's talking about. It's just going to be completely eroded. And history has taught us when that happens, it happens all at once.
Exactly.
So do you
hyper-Bitcoinization?
So do you think that, I guess, so to play that out a little bit, so do you think that as the trust is being lost, I mean, it's happening super fast, people are starting to go, shoot, I need to get out, enough people have gotten out where then once they've destroyed the currency, they don't get a second round, they don't get a way to try to reback it and try to restore trust before they ruin it again. People are already gone and there is no second chance?
I don't know.
What's interesting is I was looking at some charts. Obviously, the Dixie's been crashing. It seems to have maybe found a momentary floor. It looks like the Dixie and gold bounced at the same time today, which is kind of interesting to see them both going up. But it's been crashing pretty fast and pretty hard. It seems like the last time it really crashed this fast and hard was in 2016. And in 2016, it actually crashed it took twice the amount of time. So it's crashed in half the amount of time that it did in 2016. And what's interesting about 2016 is that there was like the Shanghai Accord. And so all the nations, I think it was the G7, they were not able to pay back their dollar denominated debt. And so they were going to have a sovereign crisis. And so they all agreed that the US would devalue so they could strengthen, they could pay back in their US denominated debt. So it was like a coordinated thing. But now we're seeing the same crash in half the amount of time, but there is no coordinated thing. As a matter of fact, the currencies are all coming down together. And that, to me, looks like a loss of trust, a big time trust, especially loss of trust in the U.S. dollar. And in my opinion, not to get political here, but the election is a mess, and everybody knows there's something going on that you can't trust it. And just like people don't want to use the Chinese currency because you can't trust China, I think people are starting to lose trust in the U.S. dollar pretty quickly, as I see in the charts anyway. I don't know if you have a...